So, welcome everybody. My name is Justin Sturgill, and I'll be presenting on visual literacy and exercise science. But before I get into that, I would like to start off with an activity. It's a little bit of just a simple one, nothing too stressful. You see, these are three different muscle tissues in the body. And can someone name me examples of where these tissues might lie? All muscle tissue. Anyone want to help me out here with cardiac muscle tissue?
The heart.
Yes, the heart. Good job. And then what about skeletal muscle? This will be the easiest one.
The skeleton.
Yes, your muscles, the stuff that you want to see when you work out, right? And then what about smooth muscle? Anybody have an idea about that? These helps with digestion, if that's a hint for you. Gastrointestinal tract. Here we go. Yes, your stomach. That's what helps. Those are three different types of muscles. So we can see that in each of those in these examples. So do you see any differences and similarities in those at all? You see how like the way the cells are set up, the way they're lined up, and some of the cardiac and skeletal are very similar in how they function, and also just how they're lined up for the smooth muscle. It just pertains to what specific area they're in. And what I was trying to do is see how you guys can communicate images to words, and that's how visual literacy is kind of implemented into exercise science, is using images to connect words and what is being said, and it's a better way to help communicate that. So here, I want you guys to take a look at this picture. This is like Leonardo da Vinci. He was huge on human anatomy, and he actually was a power to drive through anatomy and physiology. As you can tell, he had a bunch of papers written about human physiology, and it kind of like pushed us during the Renaissance to really dive in deep into what it's all about. So I'm going to tell you guys about the direction I'm going into. So I'm going to first explain what is visual literacy, and then I'll go into the competencies of visual literacy, and I'll talk about health literacy and physical literacy, which is very similar in ways and how it contributes to visual literacy and vice versa. And then I'll have my final statements on being visual literate as an exercise science student and also in the field of exercise science. So first, I would like to begin with what is visual literacy. The definition up there through the ACLR is a set of abilities that enables an individual to effectively find, interpret, evaluate, use, and create images in visual media, which has been kind of like the focus going into this capstone. And then with that, there's also 7 different competencies that help us to be able to be visually literate. So the first one we get into is determining the nature and extent of visual materials that are needed. Visuals, they do assist in understanding body systems and exercise science, so it helps communicate different body parts, because when you go through any anatomy and physiology class, exercise physiology class, you do bisection of organ systems or tissue systems in the body. So it assists in the basic needs of that. So it helps convey lecture material and that relationship between visual aid and also what is being said during the lecture. And what I have here is called a sliding filament theory. So it's basically how your muscle contracts on a cellular level. And this right here is a sarcomere. And with these few words in this picture, do you guys think y'all know what happens in the sliding filament theory? Let's be honest. No one can really tell just right off the bat like that. So there needs to be words to help communicate the image that's going on, so you help understand it. So basically what's happening is these are called your myosin heads, and they, with ATP, which is energy, they attach to the actin heads, which is the yellow part, and with energy as it pulls, it's like a lever system. So it pulls, it comes off, retracts back, and pulls until these lines come closer. And what you see here is the Z lines. Those are going to push closer and closer as your muscle contracts till it reaches a point, and then it will relax and it will all go back to normal. And that's basically how your muscle contracts on a cellular level. And without having any type of image or any type of way to communicate that, it would be difficult for exercise science students to understand an overall population. The next is find and access needed images and visual media effectively and efficiently. So there's a variety of ways to search and access images and also visual aids. So for exercise science, that's done through research, through published work, through textbooks, which is a lot. If you look through a lot of textbooks of exercise science in the field of exercise science, environmental, any type of just any average exercise science book, there's lots of information, lots of content that need charts, graphs, any type of diagrams to help explain what is going on in the chapters. And then also various websites you can look up. You can look up journals about exercise and how it affects everyone's system. The next is to interpret and analyze the meanings of images and visual data. So this is more like the scientific method, and not just exercise science students, but also scientists in general. So those who apply maybe to a lot to STEM, any type of physics, maybe even engineering as they do research. So it's basically what we learned from when we were younger, and it kind of just grows as we get older and in these fields. So in the scientific method, you have your observation, your questioning, your hypothesis. You also have your experiment, your conclusion, and results. And somewhere in the experiment part, you might find that what you were researching doesn't go with your hypothesis. You might change your hypothesis into getting different results to have a better conclusion and result section. But it applies to all fields, kind of the scientific process. And without having visual aid of what you should do in any type of research, this wouldn't be able to happen. You'd be having mixed answers. You wouldn't be very consistent with kind of information you have. So next is evaluating images and their sources. People must have questions on how effective images really are. One thing that is taught in exercise science is that whatever information you get, you have to question it to make sure it's valid. Validity is very important. I feel like in visual aids and visual media, you have to make sure that what you're looking at is a valid image. If it's resourceful, is it good enough for you to use and go off of, for any type of discussion or conversation. So most of the images used in exercise science are very effective because no matter where you look at, they are credited and they are resourceful in the way that they help explain all the material. So it may help apply different types of critical thought in the field of exercise, which I feel like is important with visual literacy, as you need a lot of critical thought as you look at the most basic, simple stuff in any images and what is right in front of you. So use of images and visual media effectively. I think this is the biggest part in the way of communicating any ideas, any images, especially in exercise science. It also better clients and technicians understanding and communication information, because there could be a mix-up and there's just some people really get confused if they were to go to any type of doctor's appointment or what is being said to them. They just might have no clue. I mean, all of us have probably watched some type of Grey's Anatomy and didn't know what they were talking about half the time, especially to a client. A client just looks confused. There's been many episodes like that. And I was trying to soothe them and make it more smooth of the transition when communicating these thoughts and what needs to be said so everybody understands. And that's what's going to get into health literacy and physical literacy. So I'll begin with health literacy. So it's very similar. It has 7 competencies. It's very interesting to look at. And from the United States Department of Human and Health Services, they define it as the degree to which an individual has the capacity to obtain, process, and understand basic health information and services needed to make appropriate health decisions. And if you don't know, the United States have been in the health crisis for a while now, and we're actually pushing towards 40% of our population being either overweight and obese. And it all kind of starts when you're younger, and I'll get more into that. But there's a few principles that assist in the National Action Plan to improve health literacy, which is a nice PDF document that you can find online that actually gives you like a nice plan of how to be better at health literacy and your own health plan. I think more people look into that, it'd be a lot more beneficial. Having that is a good resource. And I have an image here which basically plays into health literacy. So any system complexity and demands, any provider's knowledge and skills, which is one of the most important ones of how they will be the ones that will conduct communication between the client and also the healthcare worker. And in plain language use, you don't want to use any type of words that other people won't understand that aren't in your field. Then over here is more of the personal stuff. So social and communication skills, you have to be comfortable. A lot of people are very inside rather than like being able to communicate. So that could be a struggle. So you got to know how to communicate to them what is going on during maybe an X-ray, maybe any type of ultrasound. Make sure they understand what is going on in an image. General literacy and intelligence, just basic knowledge, of course, and then also world and health knowledge. What's going on around the world? What's going on around the United States, where we're at population-wise, and where we're heading in the future health-wise. Next is physical literacy. They define physical literacy as the ability and confidence desire to be physically active for life. This ultimately begins at a young age. Many of us remember Play 60, which was designed by the NFL, which helped us get active about 60 minutes per day. We've had Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. If you watch shows like that, they would have one day each summer where they turn off all cartoon shows and you go outside and you play for 60 minutes, because everyone realizes how detrimental it is when you're not able to get physically active on a daily basis, especially at a young age. So there needs to be a better education and effective communication to assist physical needs to be active daily. We know that time is kind of the essence as you get older into adulthood. So exercise is not as important, but exercise is one of the most beneficial things to do for your own personal health. So there's a little bit of a step-by-step process that pertains to any field, and being visual literate helps you reach this point. I think it's a big part of seeing what is going on and how to help you physically moving forward. And in this image, you can see that there's different aspects to contribute to physical literacy, kind of like how visual literacy is the skills, the motivation, the confidence, and the knowledge that all contribute to that, and it starts at a young age. Here we have the design and create meaningful images in visual aid. So as I said before, charts and graph designs for research are very important as we look into what we want to find, if there is any type of difference in researches, if someone disagrees or agrees with one other person in the research. But then you also go into personal stuff, so being a personal trainer. And the FIT principle and RPE scale are two most useful items to use in images. So up top is the rate of perceived exertion, which is the RPE scale. And that goes from 6 to 20, and basically when you're doing a test that either causes you to be max output on any type of machine, you basically ask somebody how you're feeling, and the more you go up in numbers, the harder it will get. And you would ask them, where are you at in the scale, and you go and you point down until they say stop, or they give you a head nod, because that's when you know communication skills, visual aid, that they're almost done and they need to quit. And then also for principle, it's just for healthy reasons. You have cardiovascular fitness, which is aerobic stuff, just running and stuff. And then also you have your muscular endurance, strength, and flexibility, which are all important. And working out. Someone who doesn't know much about working out can make any type of scale like this to help them get started into being healthy. Last but not least, using images ethically, legally, socially, economically, and surrounding the use of images in visual media is very important. And I feel like most scientists, and especially exercise scientists, do a good job for that. It's all about confidentiality when you do research, and I feel like that's very important. When presenting data, subjects aren't named. They usually have initials or they're numbered, which is very important, keeping confidentiality and making sure it's ethical. So it's important. It's of importance to visual literacy because it assists in privacy and ownership of visual aids used in research on the types of data. So if you were to use an image to show, if you have maybe an exercise program, you needed images to show what kind of exercise you were doing, you'd basically confidentially cross out their face, leave their face out, but have the movement still in process. So in conclusion, visual literacy in exercise science is much needed and it's an effective way to put images into context for better understanding and communication. It's important for many pathways of exercise science, like personal trainers, any dietary reasons like nutritionists, changing of a lifestyle, and for overall health, because that's probably the most important aspect of it. And as a quote from Malcolm X, if you don't know who he is, he's a very important part of a lot of movements back in the day, but he stated, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today."